Just let me know when to start. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll bring today's budget hearing for education and economic development to order. We do have a posted agenda, but we want to respect kind of the duration of some of these budgets and maybe just move slightly out of order. So we'll begin with the Maryland Office of the Inspector General for Education, followed by the Maryland State Library Agency, followed by the Historic St. Mary's Commission, and then we will finalize with a Maryland Economic Development Corporation. So at this time, we'll welcome our budget analysts, Natalie and Jade.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. I am Natalie Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the Fiscal 27 allowance for the Office of Inspector General for Education. On page 1, the Fiscal 27 allowance for the agency totals $2.9 million, representing an increase of $276,000 or 10.6% compared to the Fiscal 26 working appropriation. Turning to page 2, Exhibit 1 provides an overview of agency spending by object. Salaries and fringe benefits account for $2.7 million, or approximately 93% of the total allowance. Software licenses total $54,000, or about 2%, while other contractual services and in-state travel each account for roughly 1% of total spending. The remaining funding supports cost allocations, motor vehicles, and other operating expenses. On page 3, Exhibit 2 shows that the $277,000 increase from Fiscal 26 to Fiscal 27 is primarily driven by a net increase of $292,000 in regular personnel costs. These increases are partially offset by a net decrease of $15,000 in other operating expenses. Beginning on page 5, the key observations section discusses the agency's investigative activity. In its Calendar 25 annual report, the agency reported completing 3 administrative investigations and 1 audit. These reviews examined procurement practices, grading decisions, staffing and student safety issues, and the management of concentration of poverty grant funds. The investigations identify instances of non-compliance with the state law, local policies, or guidance. On 1 additional investigation was referred for further review by the appropriate local education agency. The agency should comment on the status of its recommendations and actions taken by MSDE and local education agencies to address the issues identified. On page 7, Exhibit 4, presents the number of investigations open and closed for calendar 2021 through 2025. In calendar 2023 and 2024, the agency closed more investigations than it opened as it worked through a backlog of cases. In calendar 2025, however, the agency opened 11 investigations and closed 5, resulting in a closure rate of 45%. So the agency should comment on the factors contributing to the decline in investigations closed in calendar 2025 and provide an update on the current backlog of open investigations. To conclude, on page 8, the Department of Legislative Services recommends concurring with the governor's allowance. And with that, I conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to take any answers that you may have.
Thank you so much for your analysis. Are there any questions for the budget analyst? Seeing none, thank you so much for your time. We'll be bringing it, oh, you're already there. Please introduce yourselves for the record, and thank you for coming today.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Willett, and members of the committee. I am Richard Henry, and I'm the Inspector General for Education. With me today is my Administrative Officer, Jeannie Gunthrop. Before starting, I would truly like to thank Ms. Natalie Adderate for her outstanding analysis of my office. It was truly a pleasure working with her throughout this process this year. I have worked with Laura for years, and when Laura handed it off to Natalie, she said, "Don't worry." And that truly, Natalie, you did a great job. Thank you. So with that, I know you have others to review today. I just wanted to highlight our work in 2025. During this reporting period, my office received 43% more complaints than in the previous year. And since our existence of 2020, we received an increase of over 1,300%. Last year, my office identified nearly $12 million in financial mismanagement. And this equates to a taxpayer's return of $4.12 for every dollar spent to ensure education accountability. Since 2020, my office has identified over $100 million in financial mismanagement. I have provided this committee with our response to the questions raised in the budget analysis, and we are available to answer any questions you might have at this time.
I know we have at least one new member of our subcommittee, Delegate Karen Tolles. And so if you wouldn't mind, would you mind just going through some of the highlights of the answers, just because we do have a new member? Do you have that? I'm sorry.
Yep. In the analysis, it was 3 questions that were raised dealing with some of the results that we had from our outstanding investigations. One was dealing with the Somerset County Board of Education. In that case, we identified the board was not following procurement procedures that were readily accepted throughout the county and throughout the state. When we looked at that, we looked at how procurement was being implemented. Now, boards are totally different than the regular way the state handles procurement, but they still have to follow state law and also some of the local requirements. So we identified that they were outside of the scope of what they were purchasing through their process and how they want out to identify those purchases. In that case, we sent that to the state board because, again, dealing with the board members, and the state board did rule in our favor and instructed the board to go back in the process, and also recommended that a number of board members there receive procurement training. In addition, the state board is also looking at a process through the Maryland Association of Boards of Education to develop a procurement process for the entire state, all 24 school districts, and or should I say all 24 boards of education, so that ensures that education money is handled and spent correctly. In the case that we identified with Prince George's County, I'm sorry.
That's her district, so I thought she would be.
Thank you, again. She knows you well.
Okay. In the complaint that we had with Prince George's County, it was about grade changing. Unfortunately, we did report on that. We had 2 cases involving the way that they were changing grades. The practice was accepted even to a degree where grades were just being given out as a 50, 70, and 90 without anyone being in attendance or teaching. So we had sent that to the new superintendent and his executive team. As of yesterday, unfortunately, we have still yet to receive any response from Prince George's County. I did receive a late email saying that, again, they were looking into it, but in their defense, I'll say that there has been a transition with Dr. Joseph, so I know he is working on a new team, and I know that their council we have worked with over many years, and they have been very good to us. So I expect some type of response very soon.
Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for your presentation. Can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. This question, just more broadly, just for context, what is the nature of the complaints that you all get? You know, if you were to categorize, you spoke to that there are 1,300 that came in, or over the course of a year, well, how are they categorized, sort of, what types are they?
Well, there's many categories. There could be from ethics issues to misspending, grade changing to construction fraud. There's a litany of different categories that we have. Most of the complaints that come in are either about some type of financial mismanagement or some type of grade manipulation. So we work with the school systems first. The other, a large component of our investigations also are dealing with special education, such as the one that we mentioned here in our report with Cedar Lane. We actually worked with Howard County in that matter and identified some of the problems that they had. Howard County was very receptive of our recommendations and have since made those changes. But a number of the special education matters that we look in, we either work directly with MSDE to assist, or we work directly with the school system. Unfortunately, in those cases, a lot of parents, a lot of advocates are looking for answers that they're not getting. So we try to work with them throughout the process. So not every complaint raises to the level of an investigation, but we make sure that the person that leveled the complaint or registered a complaint with us has an answer and has someone else that they can follow through with. So we just don't pass it all for anything else like that. We actually do follow up on those matters.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any additional questions for the panel? Delegate Toles, do you have another question? Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much. I have a couple questions, Madam Chair. So just to follow up on the investigation for the unfair grade changing, I'm assuming that was in 2024-25 school year?
It's actually, it was a 25 school year.
Yeah. Yeah, 2024, okay.
Yep, 24-25 school year, correct.
Okay, great. And then I wanted to know, when you do your investigations, I know you said you're still waiting, and yes, we've had a transition, but in terms of the grade changing and when there is investigation, does it delay the students actually being able to walk and or graduate?
No, none of our investigations have ever impacted on anyone walking across the stage.
Okay.
We've never had an investigation where we have advised the school system that they have to rescind a student's diploma or any grades or things of that nature. So that we leave up to the school. We report those to the school and let the school take whatever actions necessary. But we have never, since I've been Inspector General, have ever had a student not walk across the stage because of one of our investigations.
Okay, and then because I'm new, just to follow up, Madam Chair, what is the process? Does someone tip you off to say, we feel that there's some grade changing or some procurement issue? What's the process for your investigations to start?
Certainly. All of our investigations are complaint driven.
Okay.
We do not proactively go out and look. We're not an audit unit where audits like the Office of Legislative Audits will actually create an audit plan. We are all complaint driven. That's what the authority that's given to this office is based on. And as those complaints, we look into the complaints to see if it's not someone who has already filed a complaint and they're answer shopping, or if that is an actual complaint that needs to be looked at. We look at and work with the school systems initially if we feel as though the complaint is something that can be handled at the local level. But if it's not and it raises to the level that we feel as though a full investigation is warranted, then we will work behind the scenes and obtain all our documentation and things of that nature, then put out a report. But throughout the entire process, we're working either with the general counsel for the school system or members of the school system.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Are there any, oh, there you go, Delegate Wards.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation today and the work you do. In this case where you haven't received a response, have you had that situation before? And is there another step you take if you don't get a response? Do you have another action you can take after that?
Certainly. We have had situations where school systems haven't responded or provided us a response within a timely manner. All of our reports go out. We actually give them about 30 days to provide us with some type of response. If an extension is needed, then we work with that school system. Where we have found certain school systems that just have not provided us any response or any action plan, we have worked with MSDE, either previously with the Superintendent Chaudhary or now with Dr. Wright, and have advised them of the situation. In some cases, they'll actually reach out and say, is there going to be a response? Because we include them on our reports. So they also want to make sure between Dr. Wright and Dr. Michael, they are actually very involved in making sure that our recommendations are implemented.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any additional questions for the panel? Seeing none, thank you for your indulgence. This is from my mom and the other two people on live stream, so thank you for helping us get some additional detail about your work, Mr. Henry, and your whole team there. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That concludes the budget hearing for the Maryland Office of Inspector General for Education, and we will be welcoming back our budget analyst, Natalie Andrade, for the Maryland State Library Agency.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I am Natalie Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the fiscal 27 allowance for the Maryland State Library Agency. As you can see on page 1, the fiscal 27 allowance totals $112.6 million, representing an increase of $2.4 million or 2.2% compared to the fiscal 26 working appropriation. Turning to page 2, the analysis discusses federal funding uncertainty in fiscal 25 related to library services and technology act grants administered by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Following federal administrative action and subsequent litigation, MSLA requested and received its full federal allocation upfront to reduce the risk of funding interruptions. Also, on page 2, the fiscal 27 budget includes a proposed fiscal 26 deficiency appropriations totaling $409,000 in general funds, primarily related to employer retirement costs and state personal expenses. So the agency should comment on the factors contributing to the $220,000 deficiency appropriation for Montgomery County retirement costs and whether the factors are anticipated to cause similar spending growth in the future. On page 3 of the analysis, Exhibit 1 provides an overview of agency spending in fiscal 27. Public library aid accounts for $54.3 million, or 48% of the allowance. Aid for local library employee fringe benefits totals $28 million, or 25%, and the state library network accounts for $24.1 million, or 21%. Personal expenditures represent 5% of total spending, with the remaining 1% supporting other operating expenses. These costs include grants totaling $250,000 for the Baltimore City Young Readers Program, which exceeds the $200,000 annual funding mandate established under Chapters 446 and 447 of 2022, and $450,000 for the Young Readers Matching Grant Program, which also exceeds the $350,000 annual appropriation mandated under Chapters 649 and 650 of 2023. So the agency should comment on the intended use of the additional funding provided for the Baltimore City Young Readers Program and the Young Reader Matching Grant Program. Page 4 and page 5 include Exhibit 2, which outlines the major drivers of the $2.4 million increase in the budget. Key factors include a $1.5 million increase in public library aid formula funding and a $297,000 increase for regional libraries, and a net increase of $718,000 in regular personnel expenses. The allowance also reflects adjustments related to the Deaf Culture Digital Library, including the addition of 2 positions as MSLA transitions administration of the program in-house beginning in fiscal 2027. At the bottom of page 5, the analysis discusses provisions in the proposed Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act of 2026 related to the retirement cost for local public library employees. The fiscal 27 budget bill includes $722,000 general fund reduction contingent on the enactment of legislation requiring local governments to share increased retirement costs. This reduction represents approximately half of the projected increase in state retirement costs from fiscal 26 to fiscal 27 and could be allocated proportionally across Baltimore City and counties. The Department of Legislative Services recommends shifting 100% of the fiscal 27 increase in the state share of librarian retirement costs to local jurisdictions. On page 6, the personnel section shows that the allowance includes 2 new education program specialist positions to support the deaf culture digital library. These positions are funded within the mandated $450,000 funding level established in the statute. Beginning on page 7, the key observations section discusses performance measures. Exhibit 3 shows trends in library programs and attendance from fiscal 21 through fiscal 25. Both measures declined significantly during the pandemic, reached their lowest point in fiscal 2022, and began recovering in fiscal 23. Growth continued through fiscal 25, though at a lower rate. So the agency should comment on the factors contributing to the moderation in growth between fiscal 24 and fiscal 25, and describe actions to support continued increases in library engagement. On page 8, Exhibit 4 presents data on digital materials owned and accessed. While digital holdings fluctuated over the period, access increased in fiscal 24 and remained relatively stable in fiscal 25, suggesting sustained demand despite constraints related to pricing and local collection decisions. So the agency should comment on whether current data collection methods adequately capture shifts in user demand and unmet needs. On page 9, Exhibit 5 shows changes in service utilization at the Maryland State Library for the blind and print disabled. After significant growth through fiscal 23, the number of patrons served and materials accessed declined in fiscal 24 and fiscal 25. MSLA has indicated that this reflects an expected leveling following the implementation of the Books on Demand service model rather than a reduction in access. Finally, on page 10, the analysis discusses the implementation of the Family Literacy Pilot Program. Planning activities are largely complete, and the program is expected to launch in spring 2026 at the Maryland Correctional Institution for Women. The pilot is scheduled to terminate at the end of calendar year 2028. And with that, this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for the analysis. Are there any questions for Ms. Andrade? All right, seeing none, thank you. Moving to our state librarian, Morgan Miller. Is this your second time?
This is my second time.
But last time it was like your reveal.
Great memory.
So
yeah.
Now you're in it.
I'm
so
in
great
it.
to
I'm
see
raring and ready to go. It's good to see you too. Thank you so much, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Wallach, members of the committee, and Natalie. It's so good to see you and being working with you again. Thank you for your analysis. The Maryland, and I have with me, I should introduce Donna Liberto, who's our Chief Financial and Operating Officer for the agency. The Maryland State Library Agency ensures that all Marylanders have outstanding access to spaces, services, and staff in every corner of our state. We achieve this by administering state and federal funding to the 24 public library systems, 3 regionals, and empowering library professionals through certification and training programs, overseeing legislative and policy compliance, and facilitating collaboration across public school and academic libraries. We also oversee the specialized programs that Natalie listed, the Maryland State Library for the Blind, the Deaf Culture Digital Library, the State Library Resource Center, the Governor's Young Readers Program, and the County Library Capital Grant Program. The largest component of our budget is the state aid to counties, which does see the standard increase in the proposed FY 2027 budget. Maryland's 193 public library buildings are vital community hubs that provide equitable access to information, technology, and opportunity. We also have 26 bookmobiles that break down the barriers and take the library to every person in a community. At this time, more than 3.3 million Marylanders have library cards and have used them in the past year to check out over 53 million items from their libraries. We saw 17 million visits across all of Maryland's libraries and answered 3.5 million questions on everything from how do I help my child to be a more confident reader to how do I start a business. This year, instability at the federal level has required libraries to be even more responsive to community needs. During the federal government shutdown, people turned to our libraries for support. For families managing tight budgets, free programs and borrowed materials provided essential financial relief. Furthermore, libraries served as frontline workforce development centers, offering job search tools, resume support, and career coaching in trusted spaces that remove barriers to employment. We continue to build these relationships to provide customized solutions that extend beyond traditional library services, often filling the gaps that are caused by eroding safety nets, including providing access in libraries to social workers, food pantries, health and legal resources, tax and other benefit assistance, and we often did so in partnership with local government and other nonprofits. Libraries leverage these resources to serve the public in the most cost-effective ways possible. Overall, state funding for libraries represents 0.17% of the entire state budget, and it's used to serve every single person in every community in the state. And this state funding is so critical to their success, especially at a time when we have deep concerns about disinvestment in funding libraries at the federal level. Any reduction in funding from the state will negatively impact programs and the millions of Marylanders who rely on our libraries. I want to thank each one of you and the entire General Assembly for having such an outstanding and long-running track record of supporting libraries in Maryland. I'm so honored to still continue to serve as your Maryland State Librarian and to be in a state that deeply values, celebrates, and funds libraries. In response to the questions we've been asked by DLS, I'll begin with the question of MSLA should comment on the factors contributing to the $220,000 deficiency appropriation for Montgomery County retirement costs and whether these factors are anticipated to cause similar spending growth in the future. Our agency is responsible for reimbursing Montgomery County for the state's contribution to the teacher's pension retirement system, of which all library employees are a member, both professional and clerically. The distribution is determined by the lesser of the state's retirement contribution percentage minus Montgomery County's contribution percentage. Each year, the contribution rates increase, as well as MCPL library salaries. The additional funding will ensure that our agency is able to fully fund the MCPL librarian retirement, and if there are any remaining funds at the end of the year, we will revert those back to the state. As to the question of the intended use of the additional funding provided for the Baltimore City Young Readers Program and the Young Readers Matching Program, that's one I'm very proud about and happy to tell you that it's a victim of its success. The Young Readers Early Literacy Program provides critical access to books in the home for children ages birth through 5. And this is a factor that we know is a strong determinant of a child's success in school and in life, especially for children growing up in lower income households. The state currently mandates $200,000 for the Baltimore Young Readers Program and $350,000 for the program statewide. Since our last report to the General Assembly on the program in December 2024, enrollment has increased by 41%, and we now serve over 55,000 children throughout the state. Effective January 1st, 2025, the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, who we partner with to provide the books, increased the cost of each book by 50 cents. Increased enrollment and program costs significantly reduce the impact that these state funds can have. So these additional funds, which represent a 30% overall funding increase in the program, are simply going to be used to alleviate the increased costs and support expansion. To the question of some of our programming statistics, and the question was, while these trends suggest a gradual return toward pre-pandemic engagement levels, MSLA should comment on the factors contributing to the reduced rate of growth in library programs and attendance from FY 2024 to 2025, and describe any actions that the agency is taking to encourage continued increases in library activity. There's more data that I included in our response for you that I won't go into. But to summarize, between 24 and 25 fiscal years, Maryland libraries reported a 15% increase in public programs and an 18% increase in attendance. And those are pretty fantastic increases on any given year. This represents libraries doing an additional 11,810 programs and with 33,104 additional attendees. That growth rate is significant. It even exceeds pre-pandemic levels, such as the 9.7% program increase that you can see from FY 2018 to 2019. The dramatic increases that I think are being referred to from FY 22 to FY 23, which are 78% increase in programs and an 83% increase in attendance, were post-pandemic anomalies that are due to the rapid restoration of library services and hours. While I'd love to try, sustaining that level of growth year over year is mathematically impossible without a major influx of human and fiscal resources, and I dare say even the communities who love us would be kind of tired of us. These figures highlight the resourcefulness of Maryland libraries. Despite flat population growth, limited increases in budget or staffing, libraries successfully meet the demand for high-quality community programming. Many systems have optimized program frequency and format to maximize impact, often resulting in fewer programs delivered with higher program attendance at each. A statistic that isn't fully captured in the standardized data reporting that we do now, but they're going to work to capture in the future, is post-COVID proliferation of outreach programs on bookmobiles, at events, to community centers that take libraries outside of the library's walls. And those aren't even captured in the data we're showing you here. While the type and quantity of the library programs offered is decided at the local level, MSLA supports public library systems with a wealth of resources to promote library activities that are of high quality and aligned with the needs of their communities. In addition to facilitating numerous statewide programming interest groups and hosting ongoing professional development activities, our agency leads statewide programming initiatives such as Maryland Libraries Together, the statewide Summer Reading and Learning Program, and Career Success Month, which is happening right now. We also use our federal funding to support the development of programs and initiatives that are customized for communities at the local level. The next question is to comment on whether current data collection methods allow for adequate assessment of shifts in user demands and to discuss whether the agency tracks information on unmet demand for digital materials and resources. Our agency regularly reviews and reviews data and collection methods to accurately reflect the importance and relevance of our libraries. Collection usage is a key part of representing how residents use library services, and concerning unmet demand, such as hold lists and material recommendation forms, these are all managed at the county level where they should be. Our agency doesn't request this specific data, as purchasing decisions are best made in the counties by trained professionals who are familiar with their needs. But we do follow very much the trends that are occurring in the publishing market, especially the unfair pricing that is inflicted upon libraries at the hands of the publishers. Furthermore, the reallocation of resources to meet changing needs within fixed budgets, all of this remains at the discretion of the county public library systems. Next question is that the Department of Legislative Services recommends shifting 100% of the fiscal 2027 increase in state share of library and retirement costs to local jurisdictions. And we do disagree with this recommendation. Shifting the full cost of the FY 2027 pension increase will do little to resolve the state's budget deficit, but it will have a significantly negative impact on the availability of county funding for libraries, local operations, and the communities they serve. I can assure you that county leaders in the library do fully understand the fiscal challenges that the state is facing right now, and they're willing to do their part to help close the gap. But we feel that that part needs to be equitable. I do need to point out that local libraries receive significantly less funding from the state to meet their operating budget goals as compared with our education counterparts in K through 12 and higher ed, which receive approximately 40% and 26% of their operating funds from the state respectively. On average, public library systems receive 10 to 15% of their operating funds from the state. Yet our buildings are open for more hours than schools or community colleges, and some of our larger library buildings in the state will see thousands of visitors in just a single day. Library staffing levels are a fraction of the number employed by public schools and higher ed, which significantly results in much lower pension costs. And I'm not complaining, I am bragging, because I'm very proud of how resourceful librarians are and what outstanding financial stewards of tax dollars they have been, especially over the past 5 years. But at a time when local operating budgets are already stressed and several library systems we are already hearing are anticipating flat or even reduced budgets, any additional cost shift beyond the 50%, which equates to $772,970, is going to create undue hardship for them. Again, I want to thank you. I hope you'll join us and other library leaders for Maryland Library Legislative Day on February 10th. I just want to get a plug in there. And I am happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Miller, for your testimony. Are there any questions for our state librarian? Delegate Tolles.
So much, and I apologize if you said this.
Sure.
If you discussed the shifting of the realignment of the library for the blind and print disabled. Could you talk about that? They're very good advocates.
They're fantastic.
They're fantastic. Yeah. So I want to, get that question answered on their behalf.
Absolutely. I think Natalie answered, but I will expound upon it.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So our Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, I completely agree with Delegate Tolles. It's an outstanding resource, and no other state library has something that is as robust in its state. So we're very lucky for that. They serve thousands of blind and low vision Marylanders, working both with the county public library systems and directly with these communities in the state. Last year, they checked out over 350,000 materials. I think maybe what you are referring to, Delegate Tolles, is that some of their data has gone down in terms of the number of items that have gone out. That's due to a shift in the format. It used to be that when you wanted to send what is called a talking book, you would have to send a single one. Modern technology has made it much easier so that when our staff go to send items to someone who's blind or low vision, that person can now request, I think something like up to 20 on a single talking book cassette. Okay. And so instead of sending and counting one, I believe they are sending 20 items on a single cassette, which counts as one. So there's probably some ways to better reframe the way we're capturing data around that. But more likely, we've seen the actual number of titles increase, but the actual number, I'd say, of the tool itself is probably decreased because they now hold much more capacity.
Okay, thank you for expanding on that.
Sure, absolutely.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation. My question is not really related to the budget presentation, but readers. I'm just curious, looking at the attendance, it is going up. When you look at your readers, there's just a lot of anxiety about how young people and children aren't reading. So what does that look like? How does that look for Maryland? How are we trying to grow that readership? Is a lot of your attendance by older adults? Can you speak to that?
I'm so glad you asked that question because this is one of my favorite things to talk about. As state librarian, and the thought that gets me up every morning, how do we get people to read more, especially children? So in terms of the statistics overall, 50% of our program statistics are children and youth attending library programs. But you're absolutely right. We have a literacy crisis in the state, and it's not just that children can't read as well as they should or at grade level, it's that people aren't reading, and that's not limited to young children. It also deeply concerns me that only 16% of American adults read a book last year. But there's nobody who loves to try and get at that problem like a librarian, because it's about connecting people with wide access, and the programs and the work that we do in communities really inspires and sparks joy and creativity around reading. If you step into any one of our public libraries, you will see that is a huge focus there. So librarians really have a very special way of working with the communities, partnering deeply with public schools to create programs and to create opportunities that not only promote and advance literacy skills, but do the first thing you have to do, which is to get a kid excited about reading. Right now, we're doing some significant work in that area. We're working with the University of Maryland's School of Public Policy to analyze the state's early literacy programs in public libraries and the impact that they are having. We are holding partnership discussions with the schools. We've used some of our federal grants to invest in 2 pilot programs in the state, one in the county where I was formerly the director, Cecil County, and another in St. Mary's, that are really doing some innovative things to provide literacy mentoring and coaching to children and their parents outside of school. So I'd be happy to share more with you in the future, but this is something that, a battle that librarians are really deeply invested in right now and very well positioned to partner with the state to take on.
Delegate Forbes.
Sure. Building on that question or that answer, the Young Readers Program and the books that are being given to children that's ballooned to 55,000, how do children get on that list? And you said they're all over the state. How are the books delivered? Can you just talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of that program?
And you are Baltimore County, right? I'm very happy to tell you that just an hour ago, the person in our agency who runs that program was on the phone with Baltimore County trying to figure out how we can create an affiliate in your county. So, good question. Thank you. So the program partners with the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. Hail Dolly. The Dolly Parton Imagination Library essentially works with affiliates. And so at this point, I think once we get Baltimore County in there, we'll have 20 affiliates throughout the state. Sometimes the affiliates are run through the library systems themselves. Oftentimes they are civic groups or volunteer groups. On the Eastern Shore, the United Way of the Eastern Shore administers the program for 3 different counties. We have, in Montgomery County, the Wheaton Woods civic group who does it. So it looks a little different across the state. But it's the affiliates within the local counties that do the work to fundraise for their match. They interface directly with the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, and they promote the program in their communities. And we administer the state funding to them and make sure that they're in compliance with all of the state requirements. So a child can reach out to their affiliate. If you go onto our website in the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, it's very easy to find out where your affiliate is and to get connected. And once you're signed up, Dolly Parton will send you a book every month, a high-quality book, until you start school.
Awesome. Thank you.
But I will follow up. I'll let you know how things are going in Baltimore County. It comes in the mail.
It's love mail, and it's amazing that people are getting mail still.
Yes.
So thank you.
Sure.
Are there any additional questions for Ms. Miller? Seeing none, I just want to thank you for your time. Your enthusiasm is palpable. And we only got about 35 total written pieces of testimony across all of the budgets we'll hear today. And like 90% of those are from great librarians across the state who are like favorable. So you represent an enthusiastic sector of our state, and we are just really grateful to all of the work that you've done through very difficult times, and maybe less difficult times. You're just kind of an anchor in so many communities. So just thank you for all that you do for us. And we did hear the things that you didn't always agree with in the budget analysis. We heard that. So I just want to say thank you again, and have a great rest of your day. And that concludes the budget hearing for the Maryland State Library System. Thank you. Now we're moving on to our great friends at Historic St. Mary City Commission. Furthest traveled. Great to see you all. Oh, okay, Tim. Yeah, so I believe we're going to have Catherine? Yes, Catherine Barber. Did I pronounce that correctly? Yes. Great to see you.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Today I'll be presenting the DLS budget analysis for Historic St. Mary's City Commission. For some context, Historic St. Mary's City is a 1,000-acre outdoor history and archaeology museum on the site of Maryland's first colonial capital. The museum's fiscal 27 allowance totals $7.1 million, which is an increase of about $291,000 or 4% from fiscal 26. I want to start with a quick update about the impact of federal rescissions on museum operations. 2 federal grants were rescinded in April 2025, one from the National Endowment for the Humanities, or NEH, and the other from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, or IMLS. The NEH grant funded the installation of 3 interactive exhibits in the Maryland Heritage Interpretive Center, which will serve as the new visitor center. At the time of the rescission, the museum had spent about $76,000 of the $315,000 grant amount. Historic St. Mary's City was able to partially repeal the rescission, which brought the total amount received to $171,000 and the amount lost to roughly $144,000. The museum was able to cover the remaining difference with contingency funds. The second grant, which was from IMLS, was $229,000 and was designated for assessing the condition and restoration needs of artifacts recovered from the 19th century home of enslaved individuals. The museum was able to recover the full grant amount. Moving on to the rest of the budget, looking at Exhibit 1 on page 3, you'll see a breakdown of the allowance. Maintenance operations, public and educational programming, administrative expenses, and research archaeology each make up a little less than a quarter of the spending at about $1.6 million each. The major changes from fiscal 26 to 27 are shown in Exhibit 2 on page 4. Most of the increase is due to personnel costs, while the largest decreases are due to abolished contractual positions and the NEH grant rescission I talked about. There's more detail on the personnel changes on page 5. The fiscal 27 allowance includes 8 contractual conversions for a total of 40 positions and abolishes 11.5 contractual positions. Most of the conversions are in the Research and Archaeology Department, and the abolished positions include those now converted positions as well as some seasonal staff. Historic St. Mary's City did not have any reported vacancies and was exempt from the executive hiring freeze. The key observation section begins at the bottom of page 5 with a discussion of general admissions, which declined by 4.4% in fiscal 25, driven by a decline in event admissions in particular. As you can see from Exhibit 3 on page 6, overall admissions for fiscal 25 totaled nearly 35,000, which is a 35% drop from the 5-year high in fiscal 22 of nearly 54,000. Historic St. Mary's City indicated that the opening of a new restaurant and its new visitor center will improve admissions. Turning to page 7, Exhibit 4 breaks out the Commission's special fund revenues, which increased slightly due to foundation support in fiscal 25 for mold remediation efforts. Earned revenue, which includes ticket sales, leases, and donations, increased slightly from $543,000 in fiscal 24 to $545,000 in fiscal 25. Historic St. Mary's City Commission should provide an update on its efforts to secure non-state sources of revenue. The last item in the key observation section regards an April 2025 fiscal compliance audit in which the Office of Legislative Audits reported one finding about the Commission's relationship with its affiliated foundation and the policies surrounding that agreement. OLA highlighted the absence of clear procedures around procurement, conflicts of interest, investment policy, and fund transfers. The commission responded that it has since added language to its memorandum of agreement to address the audit's findings and recommendations, and OLA determined that these corrective actions were sufficient. You can find DLS's recommended action on page 9. DLS concurs with the governor's allowance. That concludes my presentation. I can take any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Barber. Are there any questions for our budget analyst today? Hearing none, is Vice Admiral Timothy Healy?
Excuse me, Vice Admiral Tim Healy is not with us today.
Okay.
He's our chairman of Historic St. Mary's City. He's the chairman of the commission. My name's Peter Carocchio. I am
Okay.
Historic St. Mary's City
We're happy to
Chief
have
Operating
you
Officer.
as
Thank
well.
you so much.
You're just
It's a joy to be
nifty.
here.
Please
It's great.
introduce your team to me.
I certainly will, and I'd also like to thank Ms. Barber for your true professionalism, and you have been a joy to work with. I speak on behalf of all of us, so thank you. My team here, we have Mike Bellis, who is our Director of Advancement and Communications, Mr. Joe Kangas, who is our Director of Facilities, Grounds, and Maintenance, Ms. Victoria Hansen, who is our Senior Accountant, and Mr. Douglas Hunter, who is our Director of Finance. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, committee members, and distinguished guests for the opportunity to testify on the proposed FY 2027 operating budget of Historic St. Mary's City Commission. I would like to begin by thanking the Office of Governor Moore and the Department of Budget Management for their support as expressed in their FY 2027 budget recommendations. The Historic St. Mary's City Commission recognizes the fiscal headwinds facing the state. We concur with the legislative budget analysis. We are especially appreciative of the recommendations to reverse cuts made to the Commission's operating budget and to convert 8 contractual positions to pinned positions. Budget reductions have required the museum to leave mission-critical contractual positions unfulfilled. The reversal of these measures will greatly improve the institution's ability to conduct research, maintain its land and buildings, and communicate with the public in alignment with its mission. The conversion of positions the museum considers permanent allows us to reward and retain talented staff members who have been with us for more than 2 years. For those less familiar with our agency, the Historic St. Mary's City Commission was established 60 years ago with the mission to study, preserve, and interpret the history of St. Mary's City, Maryland's first colonial capital, to the public. Since its inception, the Commission has worked towards the mission by managing the St. Mary's City National Historic Landmark District, protecting its natural and cultural resources, unearthing new information through an internationally recognized archaeological research program, and communicating our state's rich history to generations of visitors. HSMCC's 835 acres hold stories of the past dating back to more than 10,000 years of human life, with every subsequent period of human history represented in its archaeology, historical documents, and standing buildings. Today, the Commission and the state of Maryland stand before an unprecedented opportunity. In 2034, just 8 short years from now, the state will commemorate the 400th anniversary of its founding. This watershed moment should unite all Marylanders in honoring the states that make our state unique. Stories of triumph, tragedy, and the construction of the inalienable rights that we enjoy as Americans. Maryland's story is America's story, and it is high time our state's history took its well-deserved place in the national conversation. But the 400th anniversary is more about than a push just for recognition. The economics make too much sense to ignore. For example, the state of Virginia invested $49.5 million preparing for 2019, the 400th anniversary of both the arrival of the first Africans and the gathering of the first representative assembly in English North America. After years of planning and a successful statewide rollout, the state recorded nearly $200 million in total economic impact, including more than $100 million in impact made by 2.7 million visitors to commemorate sites, events, and programs. And simply put, heritage tourism generates jobs, drives revenue, and has long-term impacts. In anticipation of 2034 and in recognition of the importance of growing non-state funds, HSMCC is currently instigating a number of revenue-producing initiatives. Farthing's Ordinary Kitchen, shuttered for the last 2 years, is primed to reopen in March as Angelica's Kitchen. This restaurant brings HSMCC commercial lease revenue and provides an essential food service option to attract and retain museum visitors. We are also in the final stages of implementing Blackbaud Altru, a comprehensive digital constituent management database that will permit smoother ticket purchasing, online sales, donor and volunteer management, and wealth screening. This tool is a major step towards modernizing HSMCC's approach to donor cultivation and visitor engagement. The museum is also kickstarting new fee structures in its tours, adding new programs, and investigating several new-to-us opportunities for visitor engagement, such as a corn maze, a pick-your-own-pumpkin patch, and spaces for RV parking. Finally, starting in March, the museum will be increasing its ticket prices for the first time in nearly a decade. The latter move coincides with the opening of our new visitor center, the agency's largest capital program in years. We are confident that the exhibits in this facility represent one of the most comprehensive, modern, and collaborative tellings of Maryland history in a public institution. We invite you all to join us in July for the Visitor Center's grand opening. A formal invitation will follow. Before I conclude, I would like to offer thanks in one more direction. Like many state agencies, HSMCC faces the burden of deferred maintenance. Recently, this has resulted in necessary mold remediation in facilities across the museum's campus. We are grateful to our colleagues in the Department of General Services for their essential support in confronting these issues. The challenges facing the state are not lost on HSMCC, and we are grateful for the support our agency has received in these difficult times. Despite the immediacy of budget shortfalls, I urge you to maintain an eye on 2034 and the unique opportunity the state's 400th anniversary presents. At HSMCC, we know that 2026 is going to be a great year. With new revenue-generating tools and programs, new exhibitions of Maryland's diverse history, we are primed for exciting times ahead. We look forward to sharing them with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Delegate Grace.
Just a comment. I remember 10 years ago, our committee, we toured the whole state, and there was a lot of value in doing that. And I will say that St. Mary's City, where there were amazing hosts, and when you guys are talking about a museum, when you see it firsthand, you know, your mind's not trying to fill in the gaps. You know what I mean? You can actually see it, and rather than just sort of visualizing what it might look like and how amazing it is. And I can tell you, words don't describe, you know, what's going on down there. And I hope that at some point, given the fact that I think there's only 3 of us left on the committee who were on that tour, I think it would be a lot of value for all of us to not just go back there, but also tour other parts of the state too. And we went to Western Maryland last year, and I hope this continues. But I want to thank you guys for doing it. Hopefully we can return.
Thank you, Delegate Grace, and we encourage and would love to see all of you down at our beautiful museum.
I have a quick question. So first of all, I also want to say just thank you for the work you're doing to preserve this history. It's obviously not just for Marylanders, it's for our nation, and so thank you. I also wanted to lift up, and we'll hear later, St. Mary's College is also such an advocate for the work you do. I know you all work closely together, so it's just really great seeing those assets, you know, really in lockstep. I also want to lift up that I went to college at Hampton University, which is obviously near the site, Fort Monroe 1619 celebrations, and I feel like every 4th grader in Virginia has to go to Jamestown. Mm-hmm. Does every 4th grader in Maryland have to go there, and should they? It
is not a requirement, but that's 4th graders in the state of Maryland, that's where they learn Maryland history, and we used to have busload after busload come to see us. But since COVID and the rise in costs for buses and chaperones and all the things that go on with it. It averages about $80 per student to have to travel, say, from Prince George's or Montgomery County to come see us. So we're working through that. Our education department's doing a great job with the local schools in and around the entire state of Maryland. But to your point, we would love to see every fourth grader in the state of Maryland come visit us. It's so cool when those kids come to the museum.
Make it
a lot of fun.
Make it law.
I was just saying, you never know, and I would love to talk to you offline about maybe ways to make that,
we
reality
would
in the
love that.
future, because like you said, 8 years will sneak up on you before you know it, and so
Yes.
we'd love to have something to report out. So thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Delegate Forbes has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And building on your question, I have been twice, both on a fourth grade field trip to St. Mary's. And the work that you do in archaeology and the work you do with the St. Mary's, bringing students from all over the world who want to be on a site and study archaeology. Can you talk a little bit more about that? It was fascinating to me there, and it was fascinating to the kids that I was in my groups with as a chaperone.
Sure. Thank you, Delegate Forbes. Our archaeological team is amazing. Every day they are bringing artifacts out of the ground that are stunning. And what we have established on our archaeological team is we have invited young children, fourth grade all the way up through high school, to come down to visit historic St. Mary City under the guidance of our archaeologists, many of who are PhDs, and they help them sift all the sand and dirt and looking for artifacts. They teach them how to properly dig, because it's very, very methodical, and they have a great time. And Doug's handing me a message here. Yes, I was also going to mention that, thank you. We also have the field school, which we work with St. Mary's College of Maryland. I say that because we house 17 students every year at St. Mary's College of Maryland who come over and participate in the field school. Those are students who are majoring in archaeology in other colleges in and around the state and the Commonwealth of Virginia and surrounding areas. They come to do their field school work at historic St. Mary City, and that's a fabulous program.
The oldest in the country, by the way.
Yes.
The oldest in the country.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to build upon what you were saying as well. I was thinking the same thing, like, do the children take field trips there? And I would love to work with you on that, because as we look to do the programming around African Americans and coming to St. Mary's County, I think it's so important with what's happening with our federal government to take the lead here in Maryland and educate, our children on all of Maryland.
Yes.
And all of the history of Maryland. And so definitely would love to work with Madam Chair on how we can ensure that all of our children can partake in this. Because look, to tell you a story, my niece, I asked her, could I go to the pumpkin patch with her? They do that every year. And she told me, no, it's only for mommies. So you can't go. And she looked forward to it every year. So if they could go to the pumpkin patch, they certainly can get a little bit of history. So
Yes, yes. I want to give Mr. Kangas some credit here to your point, and that is Mr. Kangas and his team just recently finished the complete renovation of an original enslaved home on our grounds. With furniture and everything. It's unbelievable. And as most of you probably already know, slavery was enacted into law at historic St. Mary City. It was the first colony, Maryland. So there's a lot of tragic history, but a lot of rich history, and everyone needs to learn it.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your trek here.
Well, thank
and
you.
for your presentation, and that concludes the budget hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You all have a great day.
Of course.
Come down.
And drive safely. Last but certainly not least, Maryland Economic Development Corporation, Tom Sadowski and Candace Todd. How are you? Elizabeth Weibel? will be our budget analyst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be presenting the DLS budget and analysis for the Maryland Economic Development Corporation, or MEDCO. MEDCO is a non-budgeted economic development entity that can issue bonds and own and develop properties for state economic development purposes. In general, it's involved in two types of projects. There are the operating projects where MEDCO is involved in the management, and non-operating projects where MEDCO serves as an arm's length financing entity. On page 1 of the analysis, you'll see Exhibit 1 shows its net assets, which are divided into operating and non-operating projects. There's not a lot of change in this from year to year. In general, the operating projects have a net asset deficit, but the net operating income is positive. If you look at pages 6 and 7, Exhibit 2 shows the income and loss by project. The net income increased in fiscal 2025 to about $30 million. Many of the operating projects are university student housing, but there are a couple of projects I wanted to highlight on page 7. The Elkton Sports Park Complex began construction in fiscal 2025. MEDCO issued $54 million worth of bonds on behalf of the town of Elkton to finance acquisition and construction of that project. UMCP Energy, that's a utility infrastructure program at the University of Maryland College Park. That project was sold in fiscal 2025 and the assets were transferred to another company. The Chesapeake Bay Conference Center reported a $1 million loss in fiscal 2025 after accounting for depreciation. That project does have sufficient revenue to cover its operating expenses and some of its interest payments, but hasn't been able to pay all of its debt obligations. And bondholders have repeatedly extended forbearance for debt payments on that project. On page 9, Exhibit 3 shows the debt coverage ratio and outstanding balance for the student housing projects. All of them are meeting the required ratio of income to debt payments. Bonds were issued in fiscal 2025 for 2 new projects that are under construction. Those are the Leonardtown project at College Park and Harper Tubman at Morgan State. One project at the University of Maryland, Baltimore had been under watch status for several years for not meeting the recovered debt coverage ratio. That project was sold in fiscal 2025 to a private company, and the debt is no longer on MEDCO's books. Moving on to the issues section, starting on page 10. While MEDCO itself is a non-budgeted entity, funding may be provided in other agencies' operating budgets for specific programs or projects. And in the past couple of years, there have been quite a number of programs that have received specific funding in the operating and capital budgets. In the fiscal 2027 allowance, there's $23.5 million total for MEDCO projects, $16 million of that in the operating budget, and then $7.5 million in GO bonds. In the operating budget, there is level funding in the Department of Commerce budget for 2 MEDCO programs. One is the Strategic Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund, which receives $10 million. Fiscal 2026 is the first year of funding for that program, and MEDCO is required to establish an advisory loan committee to review applications and make recommendations. And MEDCO expects the first round of loans to be issued before the end of fiscal 2026. The Certified Sites or Business Ready Sites program receives $3.5 million. That also began in fiscal 2026 and provides site improvement grants as well as smaller site evaluation grants. MEDCO has already awarded $3.2 million of the $3.5 million appropriation from fiscal 26, and you'll see a list of grantees in the appendix. There's also $2.5 million in new funding, also in the Department of Commerce, to support debt service for a planned relocation of Prieto Batteries corporate headquarters to Maryland. And in the capital budget, there is $7.5 million in GO bonds for a planned calcine clay manufacturing facility in Cecil County. And this will be served by the Principio Rail Line project, which MEDCO is already working on and has previously received capital bond funding for. Last year's budget bills included more than $63 million in funding earmarked for MEDCO if you include both the fiscal 26 and 25 deficiency appropriations. Exhibit 4 on page 11 shows an overview of what that funding was for. There are several new projects, and I've put updates on the next couple of pages. The Trade Point Atlantic Terminal was the largest. MEDCO received $38 million total for dredging operations at the project site, and that work is expected to start early this year. The Viva White Oak project received $6 million in GO bond funding in fiscal '26 to support site work for residential roads at a mixed-use development in Montgomery County. Issue 2 on page 13 gets into Medco's involvement in horse racing. In last year's BRFA, Medco was named one of the successor organizations to the Maryland Thoroughbred Racetrack Operating Authority. And Medco is now leading the development of 12 acres of state-owned property around the Pimlico Racetrack. It has hosted an initial request for information to get broad ideas for development and anticipates issuing a more detailed request for proposals later in the year. Medco is also now the parent entity for the Maryland Jockey Club, which handles contracts for day-to-day racing operations. An audit of the operating authority that came out after it had shut down had found some issues with its oversight of the Maryland Jockey Club, as well as its procurement oversight of consulting contracts. So now that Medco has taken over some of those responsibilities, DLS has asked Medco to discuss what steps it is taking to avoid some of those same issues identified in the audit. That concludes my presentation. I can take any questions you have.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for the analysts? Seeing none, Tom Sadowski, Candace Dotson-Reed, and your other great colleague who I'm sure you'll introduce.
I sure will. I can't forget our CFO. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the House Education and Economic Development Subcommittee. For the record, I am Tom Sadowski, Executive Director of the Maryland Economic Development Corporation. And with me here today are my two trusted sidekicks, Candace Dotson-Reed, our Chief of Staff and Executive Vice President, and Jim Miller, who's been a stalwart at Medco for the past, how many years?
Just about 20.
Just about 20. Our CFO, Jim's terrific, and every year has had a clean audit and just done a fantastic job with our books. I also want to thank Elizabeth Weibel from DLS. She's just done a great job, very thorough scrubbing of our financial operations and our performance. She knows us about as good as we know ourselves. I'd like to say better in some respects, but I think we have a great relationship. She's just done a great job again this year. But it's been a stellar year for Medco in many respects. And we've provided some detailed testimony already, but I do want to hit some highlights and then, of course, address any questions that you may have. Arguably, last fiscal year was one of Medco's best, issuing over $1 billion in revenue bond financing for projects statewide. We invested more than nearly $50 million, engaging minority enterprises in our various projects and achieving upwards of 35, 37% MBE engagement in the projects that we manage. All in all, over $520 million in what we call equity impact was realized across the various communities where we engaged, where we help run projects or finance projects. So we're very proud of that. Our portfolio is stronger today than it ever has been, with all of our student housing projects achieving positive fiscal and financial performance. Our project fee revenue is increased dramatically, allowing us to hire the appropriate staffing to not only take care of the assets that we own and manage, but also to keep up with increased project activity and workflow. Our partnerships with MDOT and Commerce have grown exponentially, meaning more transit-oriented development and community development opportunities across the state, as well as new and expanding business opportunities, creating jobs and investment, all translating into a project pipeline that it exceeds $10 billion. I mean, there's a lot of activity out there, a lot of great opportunity that we're working closely with our state agency partners with in pursuing. And that $10 billion is private investment. That's activity where a little bit of state involvement is garnering a tremendous amount of private capital interest. Our work with our federal agencies and partners has grown as well. We have strategic partnerships with the Army Research Lab in Adelphi and up at Aberdeen Proving Ground, as well as with NASA Goddard and the protection and leveraging of the tremendous research work that they do in Prince George's County. Further, Medco is engaged in at least 3 different projects involving federal agencies, whereby we hope to sustain and enhance Maryland-based research and development missions and grow significant high-value job opportunities for Maryland residents. We're very hopeful that those come to fruition in the next year, 18 months. As you had mentioned, Elizabeth, last year, Medco was entrusted with state funding to launch 2 new economic development initiatives in partnership with Commerce, the Business Ready Sites Program and the Strategic Infrastructure Revolving Loan Program. Resources for each of these programs are being deployed as intended at minimal cost and with tremendously positive return. The Business Ready Sites Program, for instance, with the $3 million in grants that we've issued for that program alone, it's returning immediately $50 million in new construction investment. That's a 16-to-1 ratio. And at total build-out, the value of new construction could reach a projected $1.2 billion. That's a 300-to-1 ratio, state funds to private investment. That's the kind of return that Medco really endeavors to provide every time we're asked to manage a project that we're entrusted with state dollars. So finally, with all this engagement back and forth with our public and private sector partners, it's led us to realize the enormity of need for the services that we provide and the opportunity that lies ahead in these uncertain times. Medco's in the business of catalyzing new investment, community improvement, and generating high-paying jobs across Maryland. We often say, Candace and I like to quote Freeman Obrowski in a number of ways, but we always like to say, let's look for the opportunity amidst the challenge. There's certainly a lot of challenges out there, but we feel like there's an equal amount of opportunity. And I always like it when Jim gets excited. He gets beyond the numbers. His time with the Rouse Company years ago, he's like, we are really doing some cool stuff. And to get an accountant to say that kind of thing is really, it kind of goes beyond character. But as a result of all this engagement with our educational, nonprofit, government, and private sector partners over the past couple of years, we've been working with Governor Moore's team in the conception and the ultimate launch of what we're calling the Maryland Center for Public-Private Partnerships at Medco. This is just a realization of the work that Medco already does, but we're branding it in such a way to get out there to make sure that we can become a very engaged partner in projects that involve transportation, that involve education and workforce development, that involve the leveraging of tremendous research assets that we have throughout the state, whether it's at one of our great institutions of higher learning or at one of our federal agencies, or state agencies for that matter. So we've launched the Maryland Center for P3 at Medco just in the last couple of weeks in recognition of this great work and in recognition of the great opportunities that lie ahead. So with that, I really want to thank you for your consideration, for Elizabeth's great work, and I look forward to addressing any questions or comments that you might have.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Delegate Graced.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, if you were to talk to any Marylander, whether they're a private resident or a small business owner or a big corporation, you know, we're like, what can the state of Maryland do to help you? And it's lower energy costs. Are you guys working on any infrastructure, power generation projects at all?
Yes. Yeah, we're looking for ways that we can come in and help provide I will say that's a couple of the opportunities that we're working on through this Strategic Infrastructure Fund. You know, new substations, adding redundancy, expanding, you know, power capacity. A lot of that, though, I mean, it's involving a lot of the challenging conversations that you're having right now with the company. So we're there to act as a force multiplier, but you know, we just have to be engaged and have the right kind of local and state level approvals in place to pursue them.
Well, I just wanted to lift up that last year we did have a courageous conversation with the now defunct Maryland Thoroughbred Racetrack Operating Authority. There's a reason why you are now one of the successor agencies along with MSA. And I have to say, there was a lack of clarity around some of the MBE goals and procurement practices, as we all know. And so I just think it bears repeating that your commitments across your portfolio exceed what's even kind of the statewide goal. And I just want maybe to have a finer point on that.
Well, first of all, thank you for acknowledging that. That's one of our core values is diversity and an equitable focus in our projects, not only with whom we engage in to conduct the projects or to paper the transactions, but the communities where we're engaged. So it is very much a priority of Medcos to engage a diverse array of expertise in the conception, the transacting of the bonds, but then the construction of the projects that we end up building. So yeah, we're very committed to that. Oftentimes we look to our local partners for guidance, like what are their goals? But we do that in a way to say, okay, that's what they are. Let's see if we can not only meet them, but exceed them. One of the projects we're really proud of over the past year has been the work that we've done with Prince George's County and the public schools. There was an international award that they had received for that financial transaction, just because it's just a good way to go about and build and enhance, the school infrastructure. But the MBE performance of that, I mean, it's just so many good things to cite. So we're really proud to be part of that transaction. It was a $600 million revenue bond transaction. So we're really proud of the work that's ongoing in Prince George's. So I'm not going to say anything more about that because I don't want to steal any thunder. You might,
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sure you're referring to the P3, so, yeah, so it's been wonderful. Just make sure that we won't need HVAC systems in a couple years to be done. That always just strikes me that we spend a lot of money on renovations and then like 2 years later, the HVAC goes or paint start peeling. That should drive me crazy, so hopefully.
That's an excellent point. Thank you. I didn't provide these questions ahead of time. I promise you, the rest of the members of the committee. But when we go about financing projects, we're not using the state's debt and credit when we issue these bonds. We're going out to the marketplace. So there has to be state, local funding in place, but a revenue model in place with a lot of these projects. My point is, when we're selling these bonds out on the private marketplace, they want to see that you have a budget for capital improvement and maintenance. So when we issue bonds for projects, we have a budget, we have a schedule that identifies a balance to take care of those sort of things. So we're not just building it and then hoping everything stays in work in order for 5, 10, 15 years. We're building in a budget to actually maintain those systems over the long term, because the market wants to know that that asset is going to be in good shape for the long haul.
Be the largest, I think, most money spent on a school, if not in the state, at least in the county. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence. Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I was looking at page 7, and it's just to sort of understand your process. If you can go into just an explanation around when you're looking at your assets, the page where you have the Annapolis garage and Baltimore City garages and et cetera. There's also the UMCP energy asset, and it said sold. So how do you make that decision, sort of which assets you keep and then which ones you sell? Because
That's another great question. A lot of those decisions are based on financial performance of those assets. The University of Maryland, Baltimore housing project, for instance, it wasn't meeting its occupancy goals. There were some issues with upkeep of required capital improvements of that project. We worked with our partners and we saw a private sector opportunity, a market interest in that asset. And so we worked on a transaction and we ultimately were able to find a private sector buyer. The College Park Energy Project, that was something that we worked on for many, many years with College Park, University of Maryland. And it got to be a lot for us to own it and manage it and maintain it ourselves. I mean, given where the world has come in the area of energy efficiency and so forth, we saw an opportunity. There were a lot of improvements that needed to be made. We needed to make sure that that facility was sustainable and in good working order for the long term. And College Park went through a very lengthy process where we worked with them on a procurement and a design package. We went out to the marketplace, and now that was sold to a private concern who's now going to not only own it, but manage it, improve it, and make sure that that is a sustainable and I'd say a piece of infrastructure that's an asset to the institution over the long haul, that they're utilizing that to keep things, in good working order on campus, warm, et cetera. But it's not coming, they aren't on the hook for long-term maintenance of that facility. So to answer your question directly, we look at the performance, we look at the market opportunity, and if there's a market opportunity, we're going to work with our partners to find it and maybe look for that P3 solution that makes a lot more financial sense. Yeah.
Saying you went for it. What is that process? Is that sort of an informal understanding of who's interested and people reach out to you, or is there a more formal process that you undertake to identify those private partners?
No, that was a very formal procurement process where you don't even know who the end buyer may be. You're going out to the marketplace to say, this is what we have. What do you recommend? What's the best course forward for this asset? And so you had a number of different, and it's very costly to submit proposals during those types of procurements. So that was a lengthy, very lengthy procurement with University of Maryland that we engaged in with them. Jim, what was that, 2-3 years?
It was quite a few years that we were working with them to find a solution to the infrastructure.
So then you go out to the market comes back, and they come back with their recommendations. Well, we could take this direction, or we would recommend these types of improvements, and we settled on the group that ultimately ended up acquiring and improving and now managing the facility.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we can follow up with more information as needed if you have any further questions.
I just want to close with one thing before you guys get out of here, is that I think it's really great that you're kind of repackaging your existing work around the P3 Center, because sometimes acronyms seem innocent enough, but like if you're from another state, Medco might feel like it's about medical stuff, or you know what I mean? Like it just might not resonate. So I think it's really smart to repackage kind of what you already do under a banner that is more readily identifiable to maybe create even more economic activity in the state of Maryland. So I just want to thank you for all that you do and for your responses to our analysts. And I do hope that you have a great rest of your day. And that concludes all our budget hearings for today.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.